So Eric and I have been talking about industrial development, large fulfillment centers, large warehouse centers. It's probably the hottest or the second hottest part of the real estate market, even though we're going through significant interest rate increases. One thing we know, Eric, that isn't popular right now is office buildings and office development. So when you reached out to me, and we've already had part one of our sessions together, and I was glad you didn't say, "Hey, I'm interested in office development," because that really is suffering. I read recently that vacancy rates in office buildings in the United States is now, especially the ones that are downtown, is now approaching 50%. So can you imagine if you had, say, a portfolio of residential units of 100 units, 100 doors, and half of them were empty? Your portfolio would really suck. And
It's really it's hard to say what's going to happen with office, right? I'm suspecting it's going to come back at some point.
It might take a long time, though. You might be a lot older by the time we see.
Because of inventory, right?
What's that?
Because of the current inventory.
According to the report I read, and this was, I think, by Bloomberg last week, there's over 300 million square feet of empty office space in the United States. That's quite a bit.
I really disagree. I got to say, I'm really not in agreement with the whole work from home stuff. I really don't like it for junior people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to argue for or against it. I'm working from home, but I'm 71 years of age, so that's my excuse. Also,
yeah, I mean, for our senior people, is no problem, but for them to supervise other people, it's just unbelievably difficult to do it all.
I think I told you, I have to say, I did a course live. I still like to do some teaching. I did a course live in Merida, Mexico, right? And 19 students came to Mexico to study with me, and teaching live is incomparably better. I mean, one-on-one like this on Zoom or Microsoft Teams is pretty good, but if you have 20 students, or you have 50 students on Zoom, it's very, very sterile. And what was interesting about having people live is that the peer-to-peer stuff, the interaction between the students themselves, is off the charts better. Right. So I think you're right. Where you have a team like you do, like I'm a sole practitioner, right? So I don't really have a team, but where you have a team like yours, how many people work at Rossmann Architects?
42, 43.
Yeah, when you have 40 people, getting them together, I call it a tribal gathering, Eric. You bring the tribe together, they interact in ways that are very creative. And I think you're right. It probably helps.
Certain things like formal teaching and client meetings are great. I find it's more like the spontaneous stuff. Like that, for me, it's actually not nearly as bad, as because I work with my more senior staff and I don't need to supervise them that much. But for them, if they have to supervise more junior people and redirect them as you go, it's much harder when you have to schedule a Zoom meeting for every little thing.
Yeah, I agree. And if you're in a space where you can reach out and grab somebody for 5 minutes, those are the most productive meetings often, where you just need a 5-minute meeting.
Yeah, that's what we find. If we had like a super mature, like senior middle-aged staff that was very independent and so on, then it would be very different.
Yeah, I understand. All right, so this is actually is now part 2, and one of the things I think you wanted me to go over, Eric, was this funding model, and I put this up for you on the screen. You should be able to see it now. This is one that I'm working with a company called Tartan Developments. They're active in Florida and Ontario, and this is I've been working on, probably I've helped establish now 3 or 4 funds like this, right? So, what we talked about last time was that most developers today, Colonnade Bridgeport in Ottawa is an example, have a fund like this, which in their case is fairly sizable. I think it's around $750 million. So when they want to do a 30-story building, and in fact, my youngest son Matthew is working on, I think, a 4-tower project for them, and it'll probably be $500 million or more. they don't go on bended knee to the Canadian banks, which are pretty much closed for entrepreneurs and developers. They go to their own fund.
Yeah, that's hard to get going though, right? Like, 'cause at the
Well,
beginning, you have to get
I
it done
wanted to
basically.
show, yeah, I hear you. I wanted to show you this model. This model is for entrepreneurs. This is not the scale of Colonnade Bridgeport. This is not $1 billion fund. I mean, some of these funds in the United States are unimaginably big, like just tens of billions of dollars, right?
Oh, I don't need anything like that.
No. So what I wanted to show you, because you asked me to, is that what does this fund look like? And it's come a long way since you and I last talked about it a few years ago. So let me show you what this looks like. The founders of Tartan Developments are a couple, both business partners and life partners, Jake and Paula. They own 100% of the development company. Jake and Paula own 100% of Tartan Developments, which you should be able to see on the screen. And what they're going to do, and what we're working on actually as we speak, is they're going to start something called probably something like Tartan Investments, Inc. So this is Tartan Developments. This will be the Tartan Fund or the Tartan Investment.
Are they legally related, or are they just separate companies?
Well, they probably will be related companies in terms of the legal definition, but let me show you how it works. But they're separate companies, okay? And this company here on the right in red is supposed to operate independently and profitably. So you're not running it just to provide money to Tartan Developments and you're sucking all the money from Tartan Fund or Tartan Investments into Tartan Developments. It's supposed to be treated as not really arm's length, because it's not arm's length, but it's treated as a separate business, okay? And in Ontario, for example, you are allowed to approach, I believe, 50 investors and have, I think, up to 25 shareholders. So you could start a fund like this. Now, Quebec is a little different, right? I don't know the common law of Quebec, so you would have to talk to a notary.
I don't think it's that different for that kind of stuff. So what is it?
I don't think it's that different, but you'd have to find out.
Let's say it again. You can raise, how does it work?
So you can approach 50 possible investors, up to 50, and you can accept, I believe, 25 shareholders, all right? If you go over 50, and you have more than 25 shareholders, you need to do, at least in Ontario, an OSE, an Ontario Securities Commission offering memorandum. And that's quite expensive. That can take a year to prepare, maybe even longer. And it's certainly going to be a couple of $100,000 in accounting and legal fees to do it. And then, of course, you got to run it by the OSC. So if you wanted to make a public offering and raise, $100 million, it's certainly worth spending that kind of time and effort. But if you're only going to raise, in this case, maybe 1 to 3 million, at least initially, this is a very simple organization.
But it has to be a maximum of 50 investors and a maximum of 25 shareholders.
Yeah, you can't pitch more than 50 people.
You can't pitch, or you can't. You
can't pitch more than 50. So, for example, you can't. Let's say you had, Rossmann Architect probably has 5,000 people in your email database, right?
Right.
You can't just send out an email to them. Hey, I'm starting, Rossmann Investment Inc. Would you like to, participate? But by doing that, you've now pitched 5,000 people. That's considered a public offering.
Isn't that ridiculous? Is it just so that the people that do it can create a monopoly, or?
Well, so what?
Why do they cap the number of people you can even approach?
So what they do instead? Okay, for example, if we were going to set up, Rossmann Investments or Rossmann Investment Fund or whatever we might call it, I like the initials ER, right? ER Investments, emergency room investments. But if we were to do this, Eric, you can send out an email to 5,000 people on your list and say, look, I'm going to do a free webinar, and we're going to talk about, some really cool things that are happening in real estate. So you could pitch it as an education thing, and people could, and then you never use the term investment, right? So you just simply say, look, we have some really cool ideas, and you can invite people, and then 30 people show up to the webinar, then you're within the the bounds of what is permitted under.
What about if you just meet people for lunch and say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could, you could have 50 lunches and
I just don't understand why did they put a number on the people that you can actually approach? That's what I.
That's because beyond 50, they believe it is a public offering. Right. And then they require you to do a memorandum. It was very similar in New York State, very similar in California. So places that I've been working, all the rules are pretty much the same. British Columbia, very similar. But again, I'm not familiar with Quebec. All right. So we'd have to check that. All right. So this is how it might go. Okay. So this is kind of neat. This is a little twist.
Let's finish today, but we'll probably have another session with Shane together because he's the one that'll probably be raising the money. Like,
I'd be happy to do that. I'm here to help, and I'm glad to do what I can. All right. So you could raise, probably with this structure, you could raise $1 to $5 million fairly easily, and the investors put their money into this fund partly as debt and partly as shares. So the investors typically want to own a little bit of this company, but they also want to structure it so that some of their money is debt that they get it back, right? Shares, you buy shares in a company, your money stays in that company until some major change happens, right?
So you're saying they typically want a little bit of debt. And
so let's say somebody was putting $100,000 into your ER fund, okay, the ERF. Maybe half of it or 2/3 of it, even 3/4 of it might be debt. Typically these days at 8%. And
that's really good, actually. That's really good, actually. That's not much above what the banks charge.
No, it's typically 8%. But they would also put maybe 25% of their money, $25,000. They would buy shares in the company. All right. So the way we did it was this. The fund gets money from these investors, partly in cash, which is debt, and partly in buying preferred shares. Because what we have, the way we structured this is Jake and Paula will issue themselves common shares or class 1 shares, which have voting rights. The preferred shares do not have any votes because investors do not get any say in the running of the company. They just get dividends if the company is successful. They're an ownership, they have an ownership position, plus they also, of course, have debt and interest coming to them. All right. And what we do, then this fund over here on the right-hand side lends money to Tartan. But the interesting thing about this is that if it's a successful fund, you might lend it to other people. So for example, in your architecture practice, if a developer comes along and you like his project or her project, and they need some funding, you could fund some of your clients. That would be a huge competitive advantage for an architecture firm.
Sorry, repeat that again. If funding my clients, that'd be good.
So let's say I came along, your old professor came along and say, Eric, I want to do some really cool project in Hull, would you consider ERF, participating, and lending me some money to help me out, right? So this fund would lend money to you for the projects you're doing, but also might lend money to.
And I'm very good at this stuff. I mean, I sold this for 3.3 million, and I put 0 down. But
you're on the real estate side, you're amazing.
The only thing is I suck at is because I've never done it before is financing. I can't really say that I suck at it. I've gotten to where I am at today.
Yeah, no, you've done what you can, but what this allows you to do is it gives you more flexibility. And also,
I was talking to Shane, and he thinks that we won't be able to put an investment fund together, except for on a project by project basis, because we do not yet have the reputation like you commonly.
Well, I helped. Do you remember Sean McCormick? He's a mortgage broker I've been working with for a long time. I helped him put the Castle Bay Alliance Fund together. I think it has about $6 or $7 million, and the investors are super happy. But it's not.
Let's have another maybe talk about show a couple of examples to show Shane that he's wrong, that we can do this. A couple of examples, and then we'll go about it. And then it will try to create a competitive advantage in what we do, whether it's through proceeding.
That's where I'm going. Like when you asked me by email to talk about a development fund, I got really excited because I've been trying to explain. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a minute so you can see my handsome face.
Really, it's a no-brainer. If I have,
it's a no-brainer.
What I can do, like this, Bruce, is I can put an offer on a piece of land, do a design, have it appraised by the appraiser, and it says conditional on appraiser. So I have a formal appraisal that says how much the land is worth once it's approved. And then we just got to get a little bit of money to develop, to go through the.
So it's all part of what you and I've been talking about for years, which is create your own client.
That's what we're trying to do, because you said it yourself. What's the problem with architecture is when the project is finished, there's nothing left. What I like to do is have a big, solid client in the background that I decide when the project goes. So when a client's project stalls, boom, I hit the shoot button.
So I mean, what you just said is fantastic, Eric, and I've been trying to explain this to architects for a decade. I've been trying to explain it also to contractors. Like I coach quite a number of contractors, you know, and the scale is anywhere from doing like small projects of, you know, $1 million or $2 or $3 million to sort of 50 or 60 million.
The money that I get, the 1.9 million or whatever that I'll have in my bank account when I sell this property, that'll be the proof of credibility. Here's what this is my money in the fund.
Exactly. Oh my God, that was huge. But what I'm saying to you is the model that you just talked about a minute ago is something I call flip the paper. So I actually have a client, what she does, she's brilliant. She'll buy a piece of property. She will rezone it. She will do a design with an architect, right? So she will do the highest and best use thing and do all that cool stuff, do all the zoning and all that kind of work. And then she is flipping those properties, doubling her money in most cases by flipping them to developers who want to build.
What kind of properties, like land?
Yeah, she buys land. You know, it might have a couple of old houses on it that are knockdowns.
Yeah, that's the kind of land that I like. I like something that you can finance most of it through the bank by, because it has some building on it that you can lease. I find it very hard to. I don't know. I'm not saying it's not good, but buying vacant land.
Yeah. What almost all of my developer clients in the States and Canada are doing now, some of them are buying greenfield and brownfield sites, but most of them are buying, you know, buildings that are close to the end of their economic life.
I think that's the best. Because
it is the best.
It's very hard. I find vacant land. Even Anand Agrawal told me that until very recently, he always stayed clear of vacant land. Now he'll buy it but it's only if it's like a Hail Mary long term. He's got cash and usually undeveloped land, so the taxes are low. This kind of stuff. But
yep. So let me just point out one more cool thing that we do. Is this fund over here, the modern version of it, does not take any equity in the developments themselves. So what they do instead is they take what's called a trailing royalty. So instead of owning, say, 10% of a building, they get anywhere from sort of 3% to 8% of all revenues generated by that project over its entire lifetime. That could be 60 years. So this fund, Eric, would grow, and it would have some ownership without actually having any ownership. So let's say, you know, this fund loaned Prof. Bruce $500,000. So, you know, maybe that's a second mortgage at 12%. So the fund is making, you know, maybe 4 points on its money plus some fees. But in addition to that, maybe it takes a 5% trailing royalty. So I have a building that's worth $2 million. Maybe it's producing, you know, $80,000 a year in income. And so 5% is, you know, $4,000 a year in extra income coming back to the fund forever. But then let's say I sell it for $3 million. That 5% is another 150 grand. So this royalty thing that we've been experimenting with is really cool because it leaves the ownership entirely in the hands of you or me or somebody else, a client of yours. So we're not interfering with the ownership, but we are getting a royalty over a long period of time. It really helps the profitability.
So Tartan Development gets the royalty, pays the royalties back to the fund.
That's correct.
So Tartan Investments, what is the 10 to 12%? Is that a loan? Or is that,
what we're doing with Castle Bay Alliance, which is Sean's fund, is mostly we're doing second mortgages. So let's say I was a developer and I came to you, Eric, and I've got a construction loan of $1.5 million, but I need an extra 500 grand. You're going to lend me the money maybe at 12% on a second mortgage, maybe even 15%. I don't know, whatever it is today. But you're also going to ask for a trailing royalty, because that's where you basically are benefiting from ownership in property without having any of the obligations of actually being an owner. So
you're benefiting as an investor. You're benefiting from the interest rates at 10 to 12%.
Yes. Well, you know, the investor is getting a fixed rate. In this case, 8%.
Okay, because it's 10 to 12 is somewhere else, or
yeah, the 10 to 12 is what the developer is paying to the investment fund. And these days it can be as high as 15% on a second.
I'm trying to understand what is 8 to 10 to 15.
So the 8% is what we're paying the investors, but the fund is going to be paid 10, 12, or maybe 15% by the developer.
Okay, so they keep a margin of it from
themselves. Yeah, there's a margin. You know, this is a real. Castle Bay Alliance makes real money.
Okay, and then
they also get a royalty, right, from their clients, a trailing royalty. And we've gone one step further recently, where we're taking that royalty agreement and we're registering it on title. So if they ever do sell the property, they have to, you know, we are protected, or Castle Bay Alliance is protected. So I can explain all of this to you and Shane. Okay.
Yeah. That's good.
We'll go through it again, because listen, I understand it's not easy to comprehend all of this in one go. So I've been working on this for a decade, right? So I know it.
The Tartan Developments pays 10 to 12%, and then 8% of which is paid back to the investors, and then you have, on top of that, you have royalties on sales and revenues.
Yes.
So that's on the yearly profit. Is that right?
Correct. Well, no, not a profit, because, you know, profit is kind of a Weasley term. It's revenues. So let's say I had, in my $2 million building, I had, I don't know, 6 units. All right. And they were all rented at $2,000 a month. It's very easy to figure out revenues, right? It's 6 times 2,000 times 12. So we'd have $144,000 in gross revenues, and say I'm paying a 3% royalty, means I would owe the fund every year $4,320.
Okay.
It's a really good model, and it for the investors, they love it.
Doesn't that kill the lucrativity of the building?
Well, you know, if you want some funding, you know, it's all negotiable. I mean, you know,
no, I'm just having trouble gauging how big a hit that would put on the.
Well, I mean, if let's say you owned a building and it had $144,000 in gross income, and you had to give up just over $4,000, you could probably manage that.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, we don't want to bankrupt our clients, you know, but most people can afford, you know, maybe the royalty is 2%. I mean, I put.
Hey, I know, I'm just talking here. Okay, no, that's good. I understand how this works.
What's that?
I understand more now.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, and I'm not going to go through this because we'll do it again when we see Shane. But the way we structure this is that Jake and Paula, initially, when they came to me, they were going to end up owning about 22% of this new fund of theirs, the Tartan Fund, and their investors were going to end up owning 78%. I said, that's really terrible. I mean, I don't like that. So what we did was, in fact, we changed the structure.
Can you show that again? I didn't catch that. How much? What the percentage?
So Jake and Paula, who are the prime movers of the Florida and Ontario development company, we're going to end up owning just 22% of this company, and the investors were going to own close to 80%. Okay. And I said, no, that's a terrible result. So what we did was we priced the preferred shares, which the investors get, higher, And we also increase the amount that comes in as debt, so that the investors are buying fewer shares at a higher price. So that in this case, Jake and Paula would end up owning a majority of the company, almost 53%. All right, but we can fool around with these numbers when we get serious, you and I, about structuring this with Shane and your lawyer. You know, we'll fool around with these numbers. You could end up owning 70% of the company, and your investors might be 30%.
Okay.
Okay, but we'll do that later. All right.
So one question for you: the one thing that really gets me so far is the whole pitching thing. Because if you want to get, I don't know, 20 investors or something like that, you're going to have to approach a lot of people. Like, are they going to look through your emails and see and your call history and see how many people you called and like what?
Well, probably not. But you know, I think if you had 25 investors and they each put in, say, $150,000, and you put in $1 million, you'd have close to $5 million in your fund, and I think that's doable.
Okay.
And you know, I'd be happy to help if you wanted my help, because you know, I'm a pretty good talker.
Yeah, great. Well, what amazes me here is this whole thing that you set it up with the professional series, so they own over 50%. I didn't quite grasp that, but
no, the way we would set it up for you, Eric, is I would want you to own at least you know, 55, 65%, maybe 70% of the business.
but I have trouble seeing how that doesn't greatly limit the amount of money in the fund.
Okay, here's why. Let's say I'm an investor who's going to put in 150,000.
Okay.
And I say to you, Eric, I want to be an owner, so I'm going to ask you if I can buy $140,000 worth of preferred shares, and only $10,000 will be debt at 8%. Another guy comes along and says, yeah, I'm happy to put in 150 grand. I like the idea, but I only want $10,000 worth of preferred shares, and I'll put the rest in 140,000 as debt. So one is 140,000 of shares, the other is 140,000 of debt. If you have
so the money is most of the money is in debt. Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the ratio. So if you have most of these guys as opposed to fewer of these guys, guess who ends up owning more of the business?
Gotcha.
Okay, that's the way. So it's a very, very clever system. I mean, I've been working on this for more than a decade now.
Okay.
But in a decade of trying, I've only done with now I think I'm on, if you and I worked on this together with Shane, this would be number 4 in 10 years, which is a pathetic result. You know, I would have thought.
And you said you'd be pretty good because you're a good talker. You could help us pitch it and this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I know this this structure really well, and I can tell people why it's a very good structure. It's the best.
What I'm very good at is generating the numbers and the value. And if you're good at helping us pitch it, then I think
I'm there for you. I really enjoy doing it. I enjoyed working with Sean on this, and Jake and Paula now. And I did also I helped one other, Chad Robinson, and his partner as well.
You know, and we talked a while about this conflict of interest with clients and stuff like that. I'm not seeing it all anymore. Maybe it used to be something back when, but nowadays, if clients are actually quite happy to meet an architect that's his own, like you said, that his own developer.
100%. I mean, I have property managers who who manage third parties property, but own their own, and the way they explain it to a landlord, an owner, is, look, do you want a property manager who doesn't know what he's doing, who's never experienced what it's like to be a landlord? Well, then
That's right.
You don't need me.
A while back, you said you had some issues with an architect because he was doing his own development and stuff.
I did, but that was because it was direct competition. Yeah, that was, you know, Barry Hoban, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Barry Hoban. You know, I was building office buildings and he was helping design them. And then he would start building office buildings next to mine.
Okay.
That I would. I mean, who is your biggest client? It's one of those retirement residence guys, right?
Right now we're pretty well diversified.
But who would do you have a retirement residence?
Let's say Le Pen.
Who?
Let's say Le Pen is probably one of the.
Yeah, Le Pen. And so if you designed a retirement residence for Le Pen and then you went and built one next door, I don't think you'd be too happy with that.
No.
So that to me was a conflict of interest.
Okay.
And and Marion has never forgiven me for dropping as my architect. I went to see him. I told you, so Barry, how can you build an office building next to mine? And he did it like 3 times. And he said, well, I put a Chinese wall between the people working on my building and the people working on your building. I said, bullshit, Barry. The Royal Bank of Canada is leasing, back in the day, leasing one of my spaces. They're going into your office. Their architect from the Royal Bank is there. Your leasing people are sitting like 3, 3.
He doesn't do that anymore, though, I don't think.
No, he doesn't. But I said, this isn't going to work for me. You
I didn't realize he was developing on that scale before.
Yeah, he did. But I told him the truth, but he didn't like it. And he hardly ever talks to me.
It's interesting because I didn't know. He must have not done it very long, because I didn't know that
He did it for about 5 or 6 years, and then I said, we're not going to continue as a client of yours. They got mad at me because he wanted to do, the Palladium. He wanted to design the Canadian Tire Center for me. I said, no. I mean, you've been competing with me. I don't like that. But like I said, if you build something right next to Le Pen, they would bellyache.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I steer clear of where my clients are building.
Exactly. I mean, but if you own your own office building for your architect practice, or you own a few multi-res buildings, I mean, nobody will care.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's very different.
Yeah.
And I think with office and commercial clients, it's also quite different than what it is for residential clients.
100%. What is, when you say you're diversified, what are the main areas you focus on?
Multi-res, quite a bit of institutional, more and more, lots of government and refits and stuff like that in general. Those are our main things.
That refit business is pretty good business, actually.
It is. The only thing is that because a lot of it is mechanical, electrical, we don't have it in the house. A big part of our sales ends up just being carrying cost.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to continue on with a little bit more focus on industrial?
Sure.
All right, because I did prepare some more slides for you. All right, so we've dealt with that. All right, let's see. So this is a typical Avenue 31 site plan. You've seen this before. This is one of my clients, was after these 2 bays here, which is about 68 or 69,000 square feet. And you know that Avenue 31 gets land for free. You know that, right?
It's land leasing, right?
Land leasing.
And it's not for free, but they don't buy it.
Well, it is actually free, because they put the cost of the land lease into their operating costs, right? And the operating costs on these buildings are paid by their tenants. So Avenue 31 actually gets the land for free.
I get it, but yeah, I mean, whether you're paying it out through a mortgage or whether you're paying it through your operating costs, you are absorbing it somewhere.
But the operating costs, like I said, are paid by the tenant. So to buy this 100 acres,
but they still have to be competitive at the end of the day, right? Compared to somebody else that's buying the land.
That is true, but in industrial in Ottawa, there's such a shortage that rates have gone now to $16.50 or $16.75 per square foot triple net. They're probably going to reach $18 or $19 in the next year or two, and operating costs have gone from $3.50 or $4.50 to probably $7.50, and that's in part, in this case, because the land lease that they're paying to the NCC is in those operating costs. Think about this: if they had bought 100 acres of land at $750,000, they would have had to come up with $75 million to buy the land. That's $75 million in financing they don't have to do.
Gotcha.
Now, I wanted to show you something else about their deal. The NCC finally got wise. I've been telling the NCC this for more than a decade, and one of the people that I coach is now working for the NCC. And he had some influence on this deal on the other side, which is that they not only charge a base rent for their land, a minimum it's a triple net lease, so minimum or basic rent. they also get a percentage of the revenues generated. So the NCC did a little bit better on this lease. So there is a percentage rent being paid by Avenue 31 or by Avenue 31 tenants to the NCC. All right. Yeah, so the parcel was 99 acres. It's probably worth at least 750,000 an acre. So it's about $75 million they didn't have to. What was Michel polite to you when you met him?
Oh yeah, super nice guy.
Okay. Did you speak
Has his
French
own
or
market.
English?
Just for his industrial stuff, he already has his own architect. So he's like to use me for some multi-residential stuff, but for his industrial, he seems very happy with who he.
So I didn't know he was doing multi-res now.
Yeah, well, he's looking at getting back into it. So I think there he says there might be something.
Well, that's cool. It'd be great if he used Rossmann. Did you speak in English or French?
A little bit of both.
Very cool. That's great.
But yeah, as far as industrial work with him, I think it's pretty much a non-starter.
Well, you never know. One thing you can be sure of, Eric, is that over the next year or two, he's going to end up arguing with his architect. You watch. You watch.
Right.
And he's going to say, I love these guys, but something's going to happen. And he's going to say, I friggin' hate those guys. And well, I remember that guy Rossmann. I liked him. I'm going to give him a call. I'm going to give him a shot. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, everybody I know has a falling out with their architect eventually. Right? Same thing with your contractor. Everybody ends up hating their contractors. So I did send you this. There are some things that I think could be done in industrial. If you did get a client in the industrial space, whether it's Avenue 31 or anybody else, there's lots of stuff that people don't really understand about industrial. There's things that could be done. You've heard me talk about contractor yards.
Those are great. Yeah.
People want industrial clients. They want obviously good quality warehouse space, but they also want outdoor storage yards. They do. They have equipment. They have all kinds of inventory that can be stored outside. They want that.
How much do they usually lease for?
It depends, but I think I showed you a slide with Peter Hodowitz at Pods, right? He had almost as much space outside as he did inside. So if somebody rented 60,000 square feet of
no, I mean space, dollars. Like what do they usually lease the space for? The contractor yards.
They get actually pretty good rates. For example, a client of mine runs big contractor yards of about big being an acre at a time, and he gets $7,000 a month for an acre of land with a Quonset hut on or coverall building.
So he gets what, $7,000 a month?
A month for a land lease. So I'll see if I can find it for you. Hang on a second.
So that there is a fair bit of expense though, right? Like there's the fencing, there's the
there is. It's not cheap, but I'll show you what he did.
I'm trying to think here. If there's an acre of land, if I got a mortgage on it, $7,000 a month. Well, I don't know how far that gets me.
Well, that's a pretty good number. I'll show you what he did though, if I can find it.
I guess it depends how much you pay for the acre of land, and it depends how much you invest.
Oh, he did really well. I wish I could find it. Give me another second here. Leasing. X. Where did I put it? I'll see if I can find it in here. Yeah, I don't have it offhand. All right, so I'll just have to describe it. Yeah, anyway, he leases 1 acre contractor yards. He owns 106 acres of industrial land. And he bought that. He got a hell of a deal. He bought that for $48,000 an acre.
Wow.
So it was about $5.2 million. it costs him about $40,000 to gravel 1 acre. Okay, I mean, it's not cheap because, you know, I have clients in Arizona who do this. They only need to put down, listen to this, Eric, they only need to put down 2 inches of gravel. They've got their contractor yard because it's mostly sand and sandstone, right? Here in Ottawa, we have shitty clay soils.
Okay.
You good to go?
Yeah.
So we need 16 to 18 inches of engineered fill. So in Arizona, my client there, Kyle, he can do an acre yard and gravel it for maybe $5,000 to $6,000 US. In Canada, you need 40 grand for an acre. So he bought the land for about 50,000 an acre. He gravels it for about 40,000 an acre. Then he fences it. He puts 30 amp power there, so not much power, but just enough, you know, so you can plug in your machinery in the wintertime. And he builds a coverall building on it, 4,000 square foot coverall building. So his cost for a yard, including land and improvements, is probably about $130,000. Okay. That includes all the fencing, the gravel, lighting, the coverall building. Oh, the coverall building was more than that. No, it's about 180,000, including the land. But if you're renting it, which he's getting at $7,000 a month times 12 months, that's $84,000 of gross income times 0.66, about $55,000 of net income on a cost of about $180,000. So you get a cap rate of probably 25 to 30%. That is really terrific. You know, for example, I don't have any properties that have cap rates of anywhere close to that. I think that the best cap rate I have is probably 11 or 12%. So these guys are doing very well. And if you think about it, a $55,000 net operating income from 1 acre, if you value that at 8%, means you've got land that's worth now probably 650 to 700,000 an acre. He bought it a year ago for 48,000 bucks.
I guess there's a couple of things you got to be a little bit sure. How much are they paying today? He bought it.
How much are they paying for what?
How much are they paying for this kind of land nowadays?
Oh, much more. But I mean, a year ago, he
Like
bought
80,
this
90?
land. He just stole it basically. But no, today, if you find industrial land, you might be paying 750,000 an acre, not 48,000 an acre.
Okay.
Oh, if you pay 750,000 an acre, you got to do what Avenue 31 is doing. You don't use that land purely for contract yards. But if you have an Avenue 31 style building, you should have some small contractor yards that are available
On there somewhere. Gotcha.
because you know what they all want is they all want beautiful places. But you've also heard me talk about the fact that so many of my industrial clients want to be able to drive in, load, and drive out. Most of these buildings don't allow that.
What are the kind of things that they look for, like contractor yards? You have to be proximity, like certain amount of proximity from a highway, a city, or
the key thing is to be within 20 minutes of you know, of the owner's house, 20 minutes of you know, of the highway. 15 is better. So you want to be 15 to 20 minutes away from the action, not an hour. An hour is too far. Okay. And people who are doing this, I've got clients in North Carolina, in Florida, in Texas, California, Arizona, Saskatchewan, Alberta, none in BC yet, doing these kinds of developments. And if you're within 15 or 20 minutes, that's fine. That'll work. But much beyond that, no, not so much.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that you would want to look for in terms of, and there's something else that I think, you know, that I would be remiss if I didn't tell you. Something else that I think is really important, and I see if I can show it to you here. Just let me go through these slides here. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Something else that I think your clients should look at, Eric, are these old industrial condo models. this is actually a project I built a long time ago now. It's on Thurston Drive in Ottawa Business Park.
Okay.
And we used to build anywhere from 30 to 50 industrial condos a year, some years a little bit more, some years a little bit less. It was a fantastic business.
Well, honestly, these are the kind of buildings maybe that I'll start doing myself. I'm getting to a point where I'm finding it's going to be easier to build a fund and do stuff with that than it is going to be to run after new clients.
Well, maybe so. But this is a fantastic business model, and I know that I'm very confident it would work big time in Gatineau. Gatineau has a lot of contractors and others who love these industrial condos because most of these guys are renting and they want to own. So what we would do is back then, Eric, what we did was we were building with clear heights of about 18 feet. Today, it would be higher. It would be at least 22 feet.
So are those mezzanines up there?
That's a very good question. So what we did, you can see what we did here, was we built these buildings 18 feet clear height. Today would be 22. And we always put fenestration in on the second level.
22, you said?
Fenestration.
No, you said today it'd be 22 height?
Yeah, it would be 22 feet high. Yes, you wouldn't build it less than 22.
So I thought some of you were showing me the industrial.
Yeah, like the industrial, the big stuff that, for example, for Amazon and Wayfair could be 60 feet.
But you were showing me some of the stuff that Avenue 31 was building. You were saying it's more like 32 feet or something.
Yeah,
like
Avenue 31 is probably 30, 32. But for industrial condo space, it's small space. It's 1,250 square feet. It's 2,500 square feet. It's 3,500 square feet. It's 6,000 square feet. But it is not 300,000.
Okay.
So if you're building the big stuff, the 300,000 square foot warehouse, you're definitely going to go minimum 32 feet. But for industrial condos, which are smaller, 22 feet is plenty.
Okay.
And 18 was too small, but that was, more than 30 years ago now. So we always put in second level fenestration that you can see here because it would allow our clients to add mezzanines. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And something else that we did on these things when we put the mezzanines in is we would you'd walk in the front and we would generally leave the front the full height, the 18 feet. Because it has, it's a nice, feeling. You come in and there's a little bit of light and air and height. So we'd have a kind of an atrium effect when you come in, and usually there'd be an office at the front. Then in the back would be the warehouse space, because in the back here you would have the overhead door and the man door at the back. You'd have the man doors at the front. But here's what we did. When we put a mezzanine in, we'd still leave the atrium there, but we would only put the mezzanine in probably not more than 50% of the surface area, so that the back would have the full height for a warehouse.
Okay.
So, but what was really cool about it is we would have double doors here at grade. You would walk in to the double doors and it would be a vestibule. To the left would be another set of doors to get into the ground floor. Then you'd walk upstairs and there'd be another door at the top. So you could have two separate tenancies.
Okay.
So what happened was a lot of our clients would, the ground floor would be the industrial guy, and maybe he has a designer that he works closely with, or a plumber, or maybe not a plumber, but he has a designer or somebody else he works with very closely. And so what he can do is something we call augmented tenancy. The ground floor is his space. He's paying the cost of owning the condominium unit, but the second floor could be leased to somebody in his watershed, so to speak, and he could earn them some extra income.
Okay.
Right?
That's great.
So this was a fantastic business for us.
Sorry. That's great, Bruce.
What's that?
That's great. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. And something else that we did was, in this building, I don't remember how many there were, probably 25 industrial condos, something like that. We would sell 20 of them, Eric, and we would keep 5.
So generally speaking, you find it's better to just build the cleared height, right? And then let them do what they want inside?
We did both. Many of our clients, they're industrial guys. They said, "Hey, that's it. We're good. We'll do whatever is necessary. If we want to put a mezzanine, we'll do it ourselves." And we would be fine with that. But some of them were, they struggled a little bit with the building permit application for the mezzanine. So we would do the application and we would build the mezzanine for them, and we would charge them for that.
Yeah, for sure. Good.
So I really like this model. And this, you can see this is the one on Thurston Drive. So there might have been more than 25 units, might have been 30 or 35 units here. So these were wonderful projects for us. Here's another one I did on Ariga Drive. Kind of ugly, but it served its purpose, right? And there's the you can see all the different, here's you've got a dance company in here, you got auctioneers in here, I don't know what a control company here, a printing house here, somebody does fluids, this is signs and graphics, got a realty over here. So I mean the clients are endless, right? And this was a project that was going to go in the East End, but it failed, unfortunately. So this is a more modern design. Obviously you would produce your own designs, but it's something, you could produce something really eye-catching. They don't have to be quite as ugly as the ones I was building. I mean, I found that quite an attractive building. And you can see the sizes were 1250 to 1700. Oh yeah, they had 22-foot ceiling height, oversized doors, heavy industrial zoning, grade level loading. The option upgrades were mezzanines and office fit-ups. Here's one that's planned for Rockland. This is by Henri Carnell, a client of mine. He's planning to build, I think, 4 in his first phase. He has room for 4 buildings like this. And one of the units he will retain for his own ownership, 1 unit he will retain, to rent out, and the other 2 he will sell. So this is his cash engine by selling these 2, and this is his wealth building. He'll own them and occupy.
That's financially worthwhile. It seems like it's a lot of. Just the density seems so low, but I get it.
Well, let me show you what he's doing. And
where's this one again? Where's this one?
This is in Rockland, Ontario. So he'll have 4 units here on this property.
Okay.
And I have a spreadsheet for you, which I'm going to send you after this call is over, where we go through all of the costs, right? And we look at what I've got it here somewhere, what his profitability is. So he doesn't. On the first building, he doesn't make very much money, Eric. He makes maybe $250,000 if he's lucky. But on each additional building, because now he's already paid for the land and he's done a lot of the site works, he makes about $500,000 or more on each.
And how big is each building? 5 units?
I think each unit here, I think each building was 2,500 square feet. So this building is 10,000 square feet.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and he's going to put 4 of them together. So he doesn't.
My concern with this stuff is it going to lease? Because I don't know how well this stuff works, but I'm guessing.
I get that. I mean, for sure.
Like with residential, I'm confident that's going to lease because I know the market. But if I do this stuff, then I would need your help more.
Well, I mean, I mean, one thing you would do is you put up you put up a for lease sign before you build anything, or for sale sign. And if you sell them, then, or you lease them, then you're good to go. And if you don't, knowing you'll buy the land cheap and your position is just to flip it after a year. All right. So, one of my clients is going to build really big buildings in Caledon. But what I'm trying to get him to do is to build smaller buildings. This sketch here is just me doing it, right? So he would have large buildings here, but right next to it, he would have some smaller workshops or smaller spaces. And these would be condos. This would be long-term land leasing. Sorry, not land leasing, long-term leases. So this would be, like an Amazon or a Wayfair. Federal Express, whatever, and these would be small entrepreneurs.
Are Amazon leased, or do they usually own their?
No, they prefer to lease. Publicly traded companies like Amazon do not like owning real estate, because when you own real estate, you generate depreciation. It's a non-cash item, but it is deducted from your earnings, and therefore your stock goes down. So believe it or not, by owning real estate, these big companies depress their own stock price. It's bullshit, but that's the way it works. And there is quite a bit of demand we found. This is another client of mine. This is in Ottawa. This is Springcrest. I think he's retired now. He's even older than me, so he's getting pretty old. These are retail and office and commercial condos, not industrial condos, but he's built some beautiful stuff on Hunt Club and in Canada. And these are beautiful. These are office, retail, and commercial condos, and he's had tremendous success with them.
Okay.
So there is demand for this stuff. Let's see what else I've got here. Well, I wanted to show you one other thing before we break. Did I ever show you this this overhead?
No.
I don't think so. This is one of my clients bought this building in Waterloo. You know, Waterloo, Ontario is a very, very hot market. And it's an 80,000 square foot skinny industrial building that had been vacant for 5 years. And his name is Shadi Fahel. And Shadi asked me, he was thinking about buying it, but he said, I would only buy it because I like the building, kind of, you know, because it's cheap, but I'm not really sure what I would do with it. So, you know, it had been vacant for a long time. I'll show you why it was vacant. So these are pictures of inside the building. It's a long, skinny building, and it's got these columns right down the middle. So it only has, I think, 11'2" ceiling height. It's long and skinny and has columns down the middle. So completely inadequate and substandard for industrial use, correct?
Well, I say it's a lot of it, a big part of the ceiling heights too, yeah.
Yeah. So when I saw this, I said, Shadi, you definitely should buy this. And he said, well, yeah, maybe, but what would I do with it, Bruce? I said, it's perfect for these small workshops. You know, there's so many side hustles going on today. Millions of people are, you know, developing side hustles. So he did buy it. Listen to this. He bought an 80,000 square foot industrial building during the pandemic, in the middle of a real estate bubble that was incredible. He paid $1.2 million for it.
Wow.
That's $15 a square foot. You cannot build a doghouse for that, Eric. So anyway, so the idea was to do lots and lots of these small workshops here. Oh, wow. And so you can see this is Shadi's sketching. We were sitting down, literally just sketching it out, you know, how we were going to divide it up.
Yeah.
And then, like a few days after he bought it, he was inside the building putting up internal partitioning. And he divided it up into workshops that were 800 square feet, 1,200 square feet, 1,600 square feet. And I think he has one that's bigger at 2,400 square feet. So quite small.
The building's sprinklered. That's good.
I don't know if it is sprinklered. Is it sprinklered?
You can see it. Previous slide. Take a look.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. So anyway, so he bought it for 1.2 million. He put in about $900,000. Had some soft cost financing fees, interest, contingencies. He ended up with about $2.3 million in this building. But wait, he ended up renting these workshops as fast as he could, you know, build them. And he got it appraised about 3 years after he bought it, based on an 8.5% cap rate. It came in at, the appraisal came in at actually $11 million.
So how did he like get this lease? That's always my.
So
like how, because these are mostly workshops. Are they workshops?
Yeah, when you get to the size of 800 square feet or even 1,200 square feet, you're dealing with, you know, people who have side hustles.
And there's enough of that to go to actually make that.
Oh my God. So I read something, Eric, you're not going to believe this. I read something today. Because I got quite a few people in this space. I read something today that approximately 50% of all Americans who have jobs, approximately 50% of them have side hustles. 50%.
So here's what I think we should do. Next steps.
Okay.
Well, definitely introduce me to some of your clients if you can. You mentioned Colonnade Bridgeport.
Yep.
You said you had another guy also.
Well, I think Colonnade Bridgeport would be the right one because they're local and they do big stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to work with them. I'm actually meeting with Tim on Friday. But if you
that's
know somebody
great.
there that's higher up, that'd be great.
Well, I know the CEO. So there were a couple things that you should do. You talk to Dominic Harrison.
Okay.
And if that goes well, great. But if not, you come back to me and I'll talk to Amelia about helping you out. You talk to Tim Moore. And after you talk to him, let me know how it goes. And
I know it'll go well. It's just a friend. He's my friend.
He's a wonderful man. And after you've talked to him, I know the CEO there, the guy he works for, Hugh Gorman.
Okay.
His name is Hugh Gorman, and he's a really good guy.
Why do so many of these guys keep on using the same architect all the time?
Well, I think in the case of what we have to do is we have to try and get some of these animation ideas across to people. What eventually I do suspect that Michel will get fed up dealing with California, and he'll come to you and say, Eric, we'll try you out on one project.
No, I was talking more about companies like Colonnade Bridgeport, Canderel, and these guys. I don't understand why they always go to Hoban.
Yeah, I don't know either. In fact, it's very important. How old are you now, Eric?
I'm turning 40.
Oh, you're turning 40. That's a great age. So, it's time, with all due respect, to turn the page and start working with younger architects. At 40, you're not a kid anymore. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm not a 75, 80-year-old architect like Hoban.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 71. I know what I'm doing, but still, I understand you need to have new ideas and you need to go with a younger audience. So listen, okay, what are the next steps? Should we talk to Shane as well?
I think we should probably have a meeting about general structure and how we're going to set this thing up. I think the fund and how we set it up, how we set up the structure of the fund, and the money from the sale of 216. Montcalm is.
And when is that happening? The sale is in June, I think.
So they removing the conditions May 19th, closes June 19th. That's the latest. We might actually be able to do it faster.
Yeah. So when would we meet with Shay, in April or May?
Doesn't really matter to me.
What's that?
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay. I think, why don't we put it down then? The conditions are not waived until May 19th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if they don't buy it, somebody else will buy it, right?
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure they'll buy it though. Like they have it in liquidities. They already showed me proof of funds.
Yeah. Oh wow. So do you have your calendar there?
Actually, why don't we do this? Why don't I send you an email and we'll do this and we'll coordinate with Shane.
Okay. What's Shane's last name?
Balcom.
How do you spell that?
Balcom.
EAL?
Balcom.
LCON. Okay. All right. Send me an email, carbon copy Shane on it. We'll do something in April.
So you've been able to create funds for people that are significantly less qualified than I am, that don't have the experience, the architect, be a bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, Chad Robinson is a mortgage broker. Sean McCormick is a mortgage broker. Jake and Paula are developers, but none of them have your skills and your contacts.
Perfect.
So I've always liked this idea.
The problem I have, Bruce, is that all my wealth contacts are all in the in the development space. That's
right.
the problem. I need to find money that's outside of that because they're gonna want to keep their wealth for themselves, right? That's
Well,
that,
maybe so, yeah. We don't know that. This
like, I don't see a Le Pen or a Brazil or somebody like that investing in
Oh,
this.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I would want to talk to. I probably have talked to Desjardins, to Gilles about this. I probably have. I can't remember if I have or not, but I think I probably have. You know, I've had many meetings with Gilles, and Le Pen certainly could. You know, he could write a check for 5 million, and you'd set your fund up tomorrow. Because it's not just for you; it's also for third parties, right?
Yeah.
And I'll bet you none of them, Le Pen or Brazil, have ever heard of this, of this structure. It's a very good structure. And by the way, if we were setting up a fund that was 100 or 200 or 800 million dollars, it would, the structure would be a little different, right? This is a fund that'll get you to 3, 5, 6, 8 or 10 million dollars, maybe even 15. But once you get to a scale where you're 100 million or 800 million or a billion, the structure is likely to change. But you don't have to worry about that now until you get to the point where you have a fund that is growing to the point where you do need to do a proper offering memorandum and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I don't believe in spending a year or two on regulatory matters and hundreds of thousands of dollars when you can do it. Just set up a company. You can incorporate. How much would it cost to incorporate a new company ER fund? Would it be $800?
Yeah, something like that probably.
Something like that. Your notary
Couple
or
thousand probably, but nothing.
your lawyer could do it in a couple of days, and we'd be good to go. So I'd rather spend $1,000 than and get the fund up and running than wait 2 years or a year and spend $200,000. But we will need to have a lawyer working on this with us.
Yeah.
So the common law is we have to make sure we're dancing on the side of angels. We don't want to get into any trouble.
Agree.
All right, listen, send me an email, and I look forward to talking to you and Shane next month. And let me know how it goes with BDC and also with Tim Moore. All right.
Sounds good, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
Anytime.